Hi, lovely to have you here. Welcome to the Electro Revolution channel. My name is Michael and I'm a car and tech enthusiast. In this series of episodes, we're going through the road user charges and the arguments for and against EVs. Now, the reason we're doing this is there's a specific road user charge that's going to be proposed to be implemented on EVs only while keeping the fuel excise in Australia. Now, we're going through this process to basically uncover the reasons behind something like that, some of the statements made by politicians and media for backing up that type of implementation of a new tax on EVs. And I've also given my opinions of how this would actually work better. And that's all contained in episode 1. So this is episode 2, and this is basically a 5-part series. In this particular episode, we're going to go through how EVs contribute to public health, the arguments for and the arguments against. We're also going to go through the EVs and how they have advanced ADAS technology, the arguments for and the arguments against. And lastly, I'm just going to end this episode on my personal experiences with the ADAS technology. So I really hope you enjoy this episode. EV drivers contribute to the public health. Now, I think that's undeniable. There's a lot of scientific evidence that proves that all over the world, that they've done studies on this. So I previously provided in Australia 1,800 deaths attributed specifically to respiratory problems. And these are early deaths. These are unnecessary deaths. Now, this really, when you look at a statistic like this, it's got to be concerning to every Australian, because these are people. These are human beings that have died because of exhaust fumes, specifically exhaust fumes. Not because of smoking, not because of anything else, specifically because of exhaust fumes. And these are unnecessary deaths. If the exhaust fumes didn't exist, then those people would be alive today. And you've got to also consider, it's hard to say, but this could be one of your relatives. It could be one of your children. It could be your partner. It could be these types of things. It's all fun and games, and it's all easy to talk, unless it hits home. Once it hits home, you're not in a good position at that point to justify exhaust fumes in suburbs. It's just not right. So let's just look at some actual evidence and statistics from what we know as facts in regards to exhaust fumes. Electric vehicles, they directly contribute to improved public health outcomes. Why? Because it reduces the government healthcare costs. One of the largest sources of our urban air pollution is the internal combustion engine, which is the ICE vehicle that we're talking about. That emits nitrogen oxide, it emits carbon dioxide, it emits volatile organic compounds and fine particulate matter, and that's called PM 2.5. And of course, in the BYDs, in many cars, you'll find there's a PM 2.5 measure, and there's an automated system to clean the cabin air when it reaches above a certain level. So these pollutants are strongly linked to respiratory illnesses such as asthma, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, which is called COPD in short, lung cancer, as well as cardiovascular disease and premature death. So you may not have been able to smoke one cigarette in your life, yet you can still die of cancer. Now that should be a concern to many, many people. And now let's also understand what the World Health Organization has to say about this. The World Health Organization estimates that outdoor air pollution causes 4.2 million premature deaths annually worldwide, with vehicle emissions being a major contributor in urban areas. And in Australia, a 2020 report commissioned by the Electric Vehicle Council and Asthma Australia estimated that vehicle pollution causes around 1,715 premature deaths and 6,439 cases of cardiovascular disease each year, costing the economy more than $6.2 billion annually in health expenses and lost productivity. So what are we talking about here? We're talking about the reduction of tailpipe emissions. EVs, they immediately cut harmful roadside pollution because the communities where people live don't have to breathe in any exhaust from EVs. They can live, work, and go to school without breathing any of this into their lungs. And in special cases between very busy roads and cities, this can mean extremely lower exposure to traffic-related air pollution when it's at its highest. And there's studies that have shown that even when there's small reductions in the pollution, that air quality improves and less people have problems. Less people die and less people have cardiovascular diseases that are attributed to exhaust fumes. So what we're saying here is when governments actually increase the adoption of EV through better tax policy and things like that, then more people benefit, more of the Australian community benefit from cleaner air. Now there's a marked difference between the way EV cars are charged and the way petrol cars are refilled. When you compare the two, say for example, if you owned an EV and you specifically only charged from public chargers or from your house and you didn't have solar. So you're essentially using our electricity grid. Now what you'll find, we do a lot of coal in Australia, we've got no nuclear, and you'll find a lot of these coal power plants are built right close to the coal mines because you don't want to be shifting, thousands of tons of coal in trucks. So they essentially build these coal-fired power plants near where they mine it. Now, where is this? Do you find it located in a suburb in your backyard? No, they're actually very, very far away from you. Why? Is because a lot of these fumes kill people from the coal-fired power plant. It kills thousands of people. So they leave it away from the main population. And that's for EVs. So when you're looking at petrol cars or comparing that, now you've got the transport on ships, you've got the transport on trucks, you've got the refueling of vehicles within petrol stations, all of this sort of stuff. Now, all of these fumes go into our suburbs, unlike the coal-fired power plants. All of this goes into our suburbs, and guess who breathes it in? You and me and our families, our kids, our neighbours, all of this stuff, and it makes everyone sick. And that's where a lot of this money was spent for the healthcare system. It puts a burden on the healthcare system where our taxpayer dollars goes into. So you've got to look at it that way too. Now, one argument I've heard against this type of explanation is if EV owners were charged a road user charge while keeping the fuel excise, then actually the government can decrease the tax for healthcare costs and healthcare. If you think of what I've just said, that statement sounds ridiculous because healthcare costs are almost $7 billion a year related to the pollution in our cities and the pollution in our suburbs. So how can that even formulate? How can you even make a link to that? What we're saying here is specifically when you have pollution in your suburbs, in your streets, in your cities, more people get sick. When those people get sick, they go to hospitals, they go to GPs, and that puts a burden on our Medicare system. Now, we've got a great Medicare system when you compare it to other countries in Australia. So we get essentially free healthcare, and a lot of the communities that can't afford, say, private health insurance, those people benefit the most from the Medicare system. So it doesn't seem right to say that we should tax EV owners more to reduce the burden on the healthcare system. It doesn't sound right, but I've actually heard that argument from some people. So they're the facts and they're the myths. I hope that covers point 4. EV drivers enhance road safety through ADAS technology that's inbuilt in the car. Now, ADAS, of course, is the Advanced Driver Assistance System. Now, when you look at EV vehicles, you've got people that'll say this statement and then the ones that go against this statement by saying exactly the same thing exists in ICE cars. But when you look at the actual facts, EV cars, or the large majority of EV cars, have all of these systems in place, where ICE vehicles, only a small minority of ICE vehicles on the road today actually have all of these systems. Many of them have some of these systems, but not all of them have all of these systems, where in EVs, literally all of them have it, to varying degrees in terms of how good those systems are. So when I talk about ADAS systems, I'm looking at the autonomous emergency braking system, the AEB, the adaptive cruise control that's in many of these cars, the lane keeping assist, the blind spot monitoring, and the 360-degree cameras, and they're literally all standard now with EV cars. So what would you look at in terms of statistics? So if we look at crash statistics and we confirm the impact of these systems on crashes, let's take for example one of the US Insurance Institute for Highways, the HHS. They found that vehicles with AEB experience 50% fewer front to rear crashes. Lane departure warning systems, they cut injury crashes by about 21%, while blind spot protection monitoring, it reduces lane change crashes by 14%. Now, because again, EV vehicles overwhelmingly include these systems, then the adoption of EV vehicles accelerates the penetration of life-saving technology on our roads today. Another thing we can say about EVs is the battery pack. Now, because that's on all EVs, they basically put that on the floor. You know, with ICE vehicles, there's essentially a metal framework, but in EVs, that becomes a structural battery pack. And this is why you find with ANCAP ratings and things like that, those vehicles with side collisions, the battery pack is so strong that it reduces the impact of a side collision on an EV battery, where the metal frame of an ICE vehicle just can't do it. It can't do it as well. Now, that battery pack also reduces the risk of rollover. So if you're hit very hard on the side of the vehicle, in an ICE vehicle, there's increased chance of the car rolling, where in an EV vehicle, there's much less chance of that happening. And another thing to consider there is literally all EV vehicles have OTA updates. That's over-the-air updates. Now, I've gone through OTA updates on both the Atto 3 I've got and the Seal Premium I've got. I've actually got a series of videos about that on the channel. You can look them up. It actually works quite well. I mean, it is a long process depending on how big the update is, but nevertheless, it's an over-the-air update. It doesn't have to go back to BYD or the vendor to do upgrades of the systems in place at the service center. They can be done in the comfort of your own home, and that's where I did the OTA updates when I did them on the BYDs. Now, in petrol and ICE cars, you typically take those to service centers. You literally pay extra money for them to upgrade the firmware or add features to their consoles. Now, remember, I also own an ICE vehicle and I do this. It's a Mazda CX-5 and I do this with Mazda. The last upgrade I paid them was for the Apple CarPlay and Android Auto support, $700. $700. With the BYDs, completely free. Big difference between ICE and petrol cars. Now, I'm not comparing there in terms of cost. What I'm saying is that over-the-air updates are very simple in EV vehicles, and they also supply advanced safety features which are part of those firmware updates. And the last thing we have to know with this is road crashes in Australia cost our Australian economy $30 billion. $30 billion, and that's per year. Now, much of that cost comes from emergency services and public health services for the injured. So reducing crashes on the road helps people survive, number one, allows more productivity in the country, helps the government in reduced fees that it has to pay for healthcare and emergency services. It's better for all road users and makes roads safer. So that's what we're saying here with point 5. Another thing I would say about this is I've personally experienced the ADAS systems in the BYDs that I drive save me from crashes. Now, very regularly I park in the driveway of my home, and I park front end in, which means when I'm exiting, I exit reversing out of my driveway. Now, unfortunately, there's some people down our street that gun it down there. We're talking 80 kilometers an hour in a 50 zone. 90 kilometers an hour, 100 kilometers an hour. This happens down our street, and unfortunately we've had some major crashes because of those people that just ignore the road rules. Now, a couple of times I've personally reversed out of my driveway and one of those guys has sped past behind me and the vehicle has hit the brakes. And you know, when it hits the brakes, you can really feel it. It just gives you a big jolt. And I wonder, and then I see on the mirrors the yellow warning sign, the blind spot protection sign, and the person's just gone straight past me, and I can see him in my rearview mirror. Now, of course, if the ADAS system wasn't effective, that's the rear end projection part of the ADAS system, then I would have crashed into that person. Maybe I would have reversed and they would have crashed into the side of my car, or I would have reversed completely all the way back into them. Now, I do look both sides before I reverse from my driveway, yet these people go so fast down the street that it's just too hard to see them sometimes. Yet the BYDs have protected me from that. And I'll give you another time. Another time I was reversing into a very tight car spot and there was a brick wall behind me. And all of a sudden my foot had slipped off the brake because I was wearing specific shoes with the no rubber sole. And my foot, while I'm hitting the brake and I'm reversing, my foot slipped off the brake. And then all of a sudden the car hit the brakes. And again, it went bang like that. You could really feel it. And I thought I'd hit the brick wall behind me. And then I stopped the vehicle. I put it into park. I got out of the vehicle and there's still 90 centimeters between the rear end of my car and the brick wall. And I said, was there one of those maybe things under the wheel that I hit? And I look under the wheel, there was nothing, just a flat car park road. So that saved my car from repair, because once my foot slipped off there, it's an accident. I would have just completely hit into the back of that brick wall, and I would have had a video on how to repair the rear end of a BYD Seal. But these are ADAS systems which are fantastic, and not only do they help us not rear-end people and not do different things. Now, I've got other examples of where this is assisted, but I think I've just given plenty to go by there. So ADAS systems help. They save us accidents, they save us crashes, and they save us money at the end of the day. That's the other point I just wanted to raise at this point. And that was the end of episode 2. I really hope you found it informative. I tried to base as much facts as possible within the video. I tried to get rid of some of my personal experiences, but as you can imagine and as you can appreciate, a lot of personal opinions are subjective. They're not a general rule, and I'm not saying this is happening in every single situation, but in my personal experiences, this is what I've found. We try and organise objective opinions for everything. Objective facts, really, that's what we try and come down to. So I hope you found this informative. Like when you talk to people that raise statements like this, either you can go for or against. My advice is always do your research. This is only a tool to help you in uncovering some of that research. Nevertheless, I really hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please give us a thumbs up. It really helps that one. Subscribe to the channel, share this content with someone who'd enjoy it, or just leave a comment, even just to say thanks. I hope to see you in the next episode. Until then, bye for now.